What's up, everybody? Good afternoon, and I know you might be tuning in here expecting to see some more information about George Holani, our UDFA running back, but I'm going to bump that back a little bit. I'm going to put that video up in a few hours because I got something else that actually just happened a few minutes ago that I want to talk about a little bit. And this is more of an NFL thing than a Seahawks thing, although, of course, I will turn the topic to the Seattle Seahawks as we get into it, because I do think there is some tangential relevancy to the Seahawks' current situation. So, just a little bit ago, we got some information from the beat reporters of the NFL, the big ones, like, say, Adam Schefter here, who tells us that the Detroit Lions have decided to marry themselves to Jared Goff on a long-term contract. The Detroit Lions are signing quarterback Jared Goff to a 4-year, $212 million contract extension, which mostly, like 80%, is guaranteed. 170 million guaranteed. So this is, of course, the biggest contract the Lions have ever paid out, and it is also the second highest quarterback contract that has been handed out ever. The only quarterback to get more money per year than Jared Goff just got on his new deal is Joe Burrow, who got $55 million a year when he re-upped, I think, it was last season. So Jared Goff is now the second highest paid quarterback on a per year basis ever, right? I don't think there's been quarterbacks that have had contracts that have expired that were bigger than this on a per year basis. So I'm not here to talk about whether or not the contract is good or bad. That's a different conversation that I'm not interested in having at the moment. I can see the argument for, I can see the argument against, I can see the reasons why it's good, I can see the reasons why it's bad. And at the end of the day, I think the ultimate answer to whether or not this is a good thing for Detroit is this is just the way things work now. This is how things work now. A quarterback who is good is going to get whatever they want. And good is obviously a spectrum. There are quarterbacks that are good, quarterbacks that are very good, quarterbacks that are great, quarterbacks that are excellent. It doesn't matter. If you are good, you can get whatever you want. That's how things work right now, and that's how you get to this contract. However, what I want to talk about here is the idea of giving this quarterback this much money. And in this instance, the quarterback happens to be named Jared Goff. Because with everything I just said about how if you're good, you can get pretty much whatever you want, I say that because I don't think there's anyone out there. I have never seen a single person argue at any point in his career, but let's say since he got to Detroit, that Jared Goff is a tier 1 quarterback. I've never seen anyone argue that Jared Goff is up there with Mahomes and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. I haven't even really seen people argue that he's a tier 2 quarterback. I haven't seen people say that he's as good as guys like Matt Stafford. I haven't seen people say he's as good as a quarterback like a Lamar Jackson. I haven't seen people say he's as good as a quarterback like Dak Prescott. So, at best, when you look at discussions around how good Jared Goff is, you can usually find him in that tier 3, and sometimes I see him in more like tier 4. I see people that think that a guy like CJ Stroud has already passed him. I see people say that Jordan Love has already surpassed him. I see people say that Jared Goff is closer to the middle of starting quarterbacks than he is to the top. And I haven't done my quarterback tier list in a while, but offhand I would say I think that's probably true. So this is what it costs to get a good quarterback, not a elite quarterback or a good quarterback. Maybe he's a very good quarterback, but I mean, you guys have probably already guessed where I'm going to take this conversation. Like, let's look at Jared Goff's most recent season. Okay? 29 years old last year. 4,600 yards passing approximately, 30 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, QB rating of about 89, completion percentage of 67.3. Do those numbers roughly sound familiar to you? Does that sound roughly in line with what we saw from, say, Geno Smith in 2022? Yeah, Geno Smith in 2022 actually had a better completion percentage, up at about 70, few hundred less yards, like 4,300 yards, 30 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, so same number of touchdowns, one less interception. QB rating was actually a little bit higher, and I think Geno gave you a little bit more on the ground. Not a significant amount or anything, but he did give you a little bit more as a runner to my recollection. So, what I'm trying to get to here is that I understand that Jared Goff is younger than Geno. He's like 4 years younger. Although, really, what we're talking about here, if we're comparing 2023 Goff to 2022 Geno, it's 3 years. I know it's not an exact equivalency because Jared Goff actually had a relatively successful career with the Rams before he went to Detroit. I know that he's had really good seasons in the past before. I understand that, excuse me, I understand that he's had success winning games and making deep playoff runs, which Geno has not yet done. But this is also the same Jared Goff who just a couple years ago quarterbacked a team that went 3-10-1 when he was the starting quarterback and ended up with a top 3 pick in the draft, I believe. So just a few years ago, he had zero success winning games. And Jared Goff turns in this big 2023 season on the heels of a good 2022 season where he made the Pro Bowl, put up good numbers. Not so much success winning. He had, 9-8 record, which is okay. But he puts those 2 seasons together. And that's really what we're talking about here, right? Because in 2021, he was okay. He was passable for a really bad Lions team. And then the last 2 years, he's kind of reclaimed his former glory. Some would argue he's better than he was in LA. And now he gets this obscenely sized contract that is, in terms of money, and I know that the cap keeps going up, but monetarily, they're saying he's better than Justin Herbert. They're saying he's better than Lamar Jackson. They're saying he's better than Jalen Hurts. And then Geno Smith has a season not at all different from the season that Jared Goff just had a couple years ago in 2022. And he takes a deal that is literally less than half of the Jared Goff contract. Literally less than half. So the first thing I want to say in this video, the first thing I'm getting to here is, if you did not believe that Geno Smith gave a discount relative to what he could have gotten when he took that contract a little more than a year ago, look at this, okay? And again, I want to remind people, I've never seen a single person argue that current Jared Goff is a tier 1 quarterback. And honestly, again, I don't see very many people even saying he's on the next tier either. At best, he's 3rd tier. Honestly, I think Geno's a better quarterback than Jared Goff. Now, some people might not agree with that, but even if you don't feel that way, even if you do think Goff is better than Geno, I don't see anybody arguing that Goff is some top 5 quarterback that should be considered up there with the Mahomes and the Burrows and the Allens of the world. I think that Geno and Goff actually often get kind of put on the same plane. They get put on the same basic level. And remember, Goff already has been paid. Goff already got the big contract from the Rams years ago, so he's already made a lot of money in this league, and he still didn't leave anything on the table in these negotiations. So compare that to Geno, who hasn't made big NFL money yet. So that's the first thing I want to say, but that's just kind of, talk that doesn't really mean that much. But there's a second angle here that I want to talk about, because there's still time. It is May. The season does not start for about 4 months. There is still time. This is why I say extend Geno Smith now. Because if the Ryan Grubb, Scott Huff experiment works, which we don't know if it's going to yet, but it either will work or it won't work. If Ryan Grubb works in the NFL, and if this offense works the way that it could, And Geno Smith has another really good season, like better than he was last year, on the level of what he did in 2022 when his completion percentage was the best in the league and he had 30 touchdowns and he led a top 10 offense that really wasn't that great outside of him and the wide receivers. Are we going to have to give him Jared Goff money? Because then he'll have 3 straight seasons where he made the Pro Bowl. He'll have 3 straight pretty good seasons. I know the 2023 season doesn't look nearly as good as what 2022 was and what 2024 would be hypothetically. But it would be 3 good seasons in a row. He would have pretty much buried the quarterback that he was before he took over the starting job in Seattle. I don't think anybody who is worth taking seriously would still say, oh, he was bad with the Jets, a decade ago. So he's not that good because of what happened a decade ago. I don't care what's happening right now. I don't think anybody would be arguing that at that point. And at that point, I know he'd be older, right? Like, he is an older quarterback. I know that he's 30, I think he's 33 right now, but I don't know if that's going to I don't know if that's going to make a big difference in what he's able to negotiate for. Again, if you are a good quarterback, you can get what you want right now. And it doesn't really matter what level of good that is, but if this works with Grubb, which it really could, I really think there's a good chance here. When you take a look at the way Grubb ran his offense at Fresno State and ran it at Washington, I think it fits Geno very well. And if this offensive line can just play competently this year, I'm not even asking for anything all that great. I just want a big step up from last year where it was just brutal. Then is he going to be able to go to the negotiation table and say, I want $55 million a year, and put us in a bad situation where we don't want to have that last year of his contract right out at the massive cap hit, but we also don't want to give him that kind of money? And what do we do then? Do we just say, okay, we're going to let go of this really good quarterback and start over with somebody else? You see what I'm saying? It just puts you in a bad situation. Whereas right now, Geno Smith coming off a season where he was good. He played fairly well. He showed improvement in some areas, even if he regressed in a couple others. He was able to get the turnover-worthy plays down significantly. He was able to improve his pocket presence significantly. Didn't take nearly as many sacks in 2023 as he did in 2022, despite playing behind a much worse offensive line. But the performance might dictate an extension of like $25 million per year. Like, if you do it right now, you might be able to get 25 mil per or 30 mil per on an extension. Just add another couple years onto the deal. And that way, you're holding the cards if he does have that big season in 2024. That way, you can either let the contract play out as is, or if he decides to go to you and is like, I want a new contract because I played so well last year, then at least you've got leverage. At least you've got the ability to negotiate and say, okay, we can do it, but just understand you're not going to get everything you want because we've got a contract on you already. So at least that gives you some power in that situation. Right now, if Geno Smith has a big 2024 season, you don't have any power. You can either let him play out the last year of his deal at a really high cap hit, you can just let him go and lose a really valuable asset for nothing, or you can extend him for, at that point, he probably would ask for monster money because his play will have warranted it. Now, if he doesn't play well in 2024, then of course you would regret an extension, but life is a gamble. Whatever you do here, you're gambling. You're just gambling on a different thing. So the fact that Jared Goff has gotten paid this kind of money should definitely crystallize in people's minds that there is a scenario here where Geno Smith gets to go to John Schneider next offseason and say, I'm worth $55 million a year, and for him to be right. So this is why throughout this offseason I have advocated for taking care of the extension now, while he would probably be willing to take a lot less money than that. Even $30 million a year sounds a lot better than 55. What do you think, guys? How do you feel about this one? All right, I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. George Holani video later.